I never thought I'd end up in this situation, standing in the middle of a dusty field, heart pounding, with my brother laughing behind the camera. It started off as just another ordinary afternoon. The sun was sinking low, casting long shadows over the pasture where our horse, Ranger, was lazily flicking his tail. My brother had this look on his face, the kind that always meant trouble. And the next thing I knew, I was roped into something I wasn't entirely sure about. Let me back up a little. My brother and I have always had a bit of a competitive streak. Ever since we were kids, we dared each other to do ridiculous things, pushing the limits just to see who would crack first. He was always the mastermind, the one who came up with the ideas, while I was usually the one dumb enough to go along with them. But this time was different. He had the camera rolling before I even knew what was happening. "Trust me," he said, grinning like he had just won the lottery. That was my first mistake, trusting him. Because if there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that when my brother says trust me, it usually means I'm about to regret something. Ranger, our big, gentle giant of a horse, stood there watching us with the most unimpressed look, as if he already knew this was a bad idea. And honestly, I should have listened to him. But my brother was already hyping it up, making it sound like the greatest idea in the world. "Come on," he urged. "It'll be legendary." And like an idiot, I took the bait. I could feel my stomach twisting as I took my position. My brother was holding back laughter, adjusting the camera to make sure he got the best angle. "All right," he said, barely containing himself. "Whenever you're ready." I took a deep breath, my hands gripping tightly, my brain screaming at me to reconsider. But at this point, I was in too deep. The challenge had been set, the camera was rolling, and backing out wasn't an option. Not unless I wanted to hear about it for the rest of my life. And then, well, let's just say that what happened next did not go as planned. I barely had a second to react before everything spiraled into complete chaos. My brother's laughter turned into something else entirely, a mix of shock and disbelief. The camera shook as he struggled to keep it steady. And Ranger? Well, Ranger had his own opinion on the matter, and he made sure we knew exactly how he felt. I still don't know if I should be embarrassed, proud, or just grateful that I made it out in one piece. But one thing's for sure, this is a moment neither of us will ever forget. And when you see what actually happened, well, let's just say you won't either. I wish I could tell you I was fully prepared for what happened next, but honestly, I barely had time to react. 1 second everything was fine. Ranger standing there, my brother giggling behind the camera, me trying to hype myself up for whatever crazy thing he had in mind. And then, in the blink of an eye, it all went sideways. Ranger must have sensed something was off because, just as I made my move, he shifted. Not a big dramatic movement, just a small shift of his weight, enough to throw me completely off balance. My heart shot into my throat as I stumbled, flailing like an idiot, trying to regain control. My brother? Oh, he was no help at all. I could hear him absolutely losing it, his laughter turning into these weird, gasping sounds as he struggled to keep the camera steady. And the worst part? Ranger wasn't even fazed. He just stood there, staring at me like I was the dumbest human he had ever met. And maybe, at that moment, I was. Because instead of stopping, instead of taking a step back and reassessing, I doubled down. I was too deep in it now. The camera was rolling, my brother was watching, and there was no way I was giving him the satisfaction of seeing me back out. That's the thing about growing up with a sibling like mine. We don't just challenge each other, we push each other to the absolute limit. It's always been like that. Whether it was climbing trees higher than we should, racing bikes down steep hills, or daring each other to eat the spiciest food we could find, we never knew when to quit. And even though I knew this was probably going to end terribly, I couldn't let him win. I took another deep breath, adjusting my grip, steadying my feet, trying to block out the sound of my brother wheezing with laughter. I was determined this time. I was going to pull it off. No mistakes, no second guessing, just full commitment. But what I didn't realize was that Ranger had his own plans, and they definitely didn't line up with mine. Before I could even make my next move, something spooked him. Maybe it was the wind, maybe it was my awkward fumbling, or maybe, just maybe, he was just messing with me. Because in the next instant, everything erupted into chaos. Ranger shifted again, only this time it wasn't subtle. I barely had time to react before my feet left the ground. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. I felt weightless, my arms flailing as the ground rushed away from me. My brother's laughter turned into a loud, shocked gasp, and that's when I knew. This was bad. Ranger, completely unbothered, had taken one massive step forward, and in doing so, he had completely thrown me off balance. I wasn't falling gracefully either. No slow motion, cinematic moment here. It was a full-blown, out-of-control wipeout. The next thing I knew, I hit the ground hard, a cloud of dust exploding around me. My brother was howling with laughter, the camera shaking as he tried to keep filming. "Oh my, did you just—" He choked out between laughs, barely able to get the words out. I groaned, rolling onto my back, my body aching from the impact. And then I realized something even worse. Ranger was still moving, slowly, but still moving. And if I didn't get out of the way fast enough, I was about to be in a much worse situation. My instincts kicked in, and I scrambled to roll away just as his giant hoof came down inches from where I had just been lying. My heart nearly stopped. That was way too close. But of course, my brother wasn't concerned about that. Nope. He was too busy losing his mind, barely able to stand from laughing so hard. "Dude, that was amazing," he gasped, wiping tears from his eyes. "Do it again." I wasn't ready. I shot him a look, still catching my breath. "Yeah? Why don't you try it next?" I snapped. But the truth was, this wasn't over, not even close. I was still lying there, catching my breath, when I realized my brother wasn't done. He was still filming, still laughing, still waiting for me to do something even crazier. And knowing him, he wouldn't stop pushing until I gave in. I could already see it in his face, the gears turning, the next wild idea forming in his head. Ranger, on the other hand, was completely over it. He gave me one long, unimpressed look before flicking his tail and stepping away, probably wondering why he had to deal with humans like us. I could feel the dust in my hair, my shirt smeared with dirt. But my brother? He was looking at me like we were just getting started. "All right," he said, still trying to contain his laughter. "But what if—" "No," I cut him off immediately. "Come on, just hear me out." "Absolutely not." That didn't stop him. He ran up beside me, waving the camera in my face. "You almost had it. If you just try one more time," I groaned, pushing myself up to my feet. "Why don't you do it then?" I challenged, brushing the dirt off my jeans. He grinned. That kind of grin that always meant he had an even dumber idea. "Fine," he said. "I will." I blinked. That wasn't the reaction I expected. "Wait, seriously?" "Oh yeah," he nodded, already adjusting the camera angle. "But you have to film it." This was bad, really bad, because if I knew anything about my brother, it was that when he decided to one-up me, things had a way of getting way out of control. And something told me this was about to be the worst one yet. I should have stopped him. I knew I should have stopped him. But the second my brother gets that look in his eyes, there's no turning back. He thrives on chaos. And unfortunately, I was about to witness that chaos unfold firsthand. He handed me the camera with way too much confidence, stretching his arms like he was about to pull off something impressive. Ranger, who had barely been tolerating my nonsense, let out a deep sigh, like he somehow knew this was about to get even worse. I adjusted the camera, still not sure if I wanted to encourage this, but curiosity got the best of me. "All right, you ready?" my brother asked, bouncing on his heels. "No," I said flatly, but he took that as a yes. Then it happened, fast, too fast. He grabbed onto Ranger, just like I had, but with way less hesitation. And for a split second, it looked like he was actually pulling it off. But then, just when he was starting to gloat, the real disaster struck. A loud noise echoed from the far side of the field. It could have been the wind, a car backfiring, or maybe just a random rustling in the trees. Whatever it was, it spooked Ranger badly. One second, my brother was grinning at the camera, completely in control. The next, Ranger bolted. And my brother? He didn't let go. I barely had time to react before he was being dragged. His feet skidded through the dirt, arms flailing as he tried to regain control. "Let go! Let go!" I shouted, the camera shaking wildly in my hands as I tried to keep up. But in true older brother fashion, he was too stubborn. "I got this!" he yelled back, right before he didn't. Because the next thing I saw, him completely losing his grip, and in the most ridiculous, slow-motion kind of way, he tumbled backward, flipping over himself before landing flat on his back with a loud thud. Silence. For a second, I was too stunned to react. Even Ranger, now a safe distance away, had stopped and turned his head, as if checking to see if the damage was as bad as it looked. And my brother? He just lay there, completely still. Then, without warning, he let out a single wheezing breath and muttered, "Did you get that on camera?" I was too busy laughing to answer, but something told me this wasn't the end of it. Not yet. Before I could even catch my breath from laughing, my brother groaned and rolled onto his side, spitting out a mouthful of dust. "Dude," he croaked, wiping his face. "That was not supposed to happen." "Oh, really?" I gasped between laughs. Because from this side of the camera, it looked exactly like what was supposed to happen. He shot me a glare, but was too winded to argue. I stepped closer, still holding the camera, making sure I got a good shot of him lying there like a broken scarecrow. "I swear," he muttered, staring up at the sky, "that horse has it out for me." Ranger, who had finally stopped his dramatic getaway, stood a few yards away, flicking his tail like nothing had happened. If anything, he looked proud of himself. I couldn't tell if he was just relieved to be left alone, or if this had been some kind of personal revenge for all the dumb stuff we had put him through over the years. Either way, he wasn't coming back anytime soon. My brother groaned again and sat up, rubbing his back. "Okay, fine. Maybe that was a bad idea." "Maybe?" I snorted. He ignored me, squinting toward Ranger. "But I almost had it." I gawked at him. "Dude, you just got wrecked, and you still want to try again?" He hesitated, brushing dirt off his shirt. "I mean, kinda?" I had to admire his commitment to stupidity. But before I could argue, something made us both freeze. A noise. Not the wind. Not a random car. Something closer. Slow, deliberate footsteps crunching in the dirt behind us. I turned first. My stomach flipped. We weren't alone. I turned so fast I nearly dropped the camera. My brother, still brushing himself off, went stiff when he saw my face. "What?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because standing a few feet away, arms crossed, and an expression that could melt steel, was our neighbor. The one who owned the land just past our fence. The one who definitely didn't appreciate us causing chaos near his property. "Oh," my brother muttered under his breath. "That's not good." We both stood there, frozen, as the old man eyed us. He glanced from me to my brother, then to Ranger, who had finally stopped a safe distance away, looking as innocent as ever. The silence dragged on long enough for my heart to start pounding. Then, in the most gruff, deadpan voice, he said, "You boys done terrorizing that horse?" I opened my mouth, but my brother beat me to it. "Define terrorizing." I wanted to die. The old man just sighed, shaking his head like he had seen this all before. "Your lucky Ranger's got more patience than you two." He pointed a finger at my brother, still covered in dust. "And you, maybe let go next time." "Yes, sir," my brother muttered, looking thoroughly scolded. For a moment, I thought we were about to get chewed out. But then, to my absolute shock, the old man chuckled, a real, genuine laugh. "Wish I had my camera," he said, shaking his head. "That was the dumbest thing I've seen in a long time." That was it. My brother cracked up. I cracked up. Even Ranger let out a huff, like he was laughing at us too. The tension disappeared in an instant, and suddenly, it all just felt ridiculous. After another long sigh, the neighbor gave us one last shake of his head and walked off, muttering something about kids these days. My brother pushed himself up, groaning as he stretched. Well, he said, brushing off his jeans, at least we got the shot. I stared at him. The shot? Dude, you almost got trampled, humiliated yourself in front of Ranger and our neighbor, and now you're worried about the footage? He shrugged. Yeah, but it's gonna be epic. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. We may have looked like complete idiots, but if nothing else, we had a story. A ridiculous, painful, unforgettable story. And when we finally uploaded the video later that night, one thing was certain. People were definitely going to watch.